Hello and welcome to episode number 6 of Desktop, the show where Mike and I sit down every, it seems like, I guess, couple of months. And sometimes we have guests. And this is mostly just a show for Mike and I to talk about technology and how it relates to our lifestyle and how it relates to society instead of our more tech focused and science focused future chat. So, how you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great. It's beautiful here. It's middle of summer.
Yeah,
It's
well, it's the very beginning of summer.
it
It's like
feels like
the
the middle of summer
fourth
for us
day.
because
Yeah,
it's been nice since like May long weekend here. I don't think we've
nice.
had a bad stretch of weather since then. So
Cool.
yeah, no, can't complain at all. Yeah.
We have quite a bit to talk about. I think most of our show is going to be dedicated to um, the new update. I guess it's going to be centered around the new update to Pokemon Go that came out. But we want to talk not
It's
necessarily
it's
about the game.
motivated. It's
Yeah, it's
motivated by
motivated
the new
by
update. I wouldn't say it's centered on it.
right. Yeah, definitely motivated and inspired by for this particular week. But um, yeah, I think we will save our full breakdown of how the game has changed for us um, for future chat when we can have Nick back to add some of his insights. But before we get to that, I wanted to bring up a little bit of follow up from last episode for people who haven't listened to it or barely remember it like me. Uh, we talked, at least in some manner, about filter bubbles and about technology and how it relates to news and politics, and how I was kind of frustrated with, first of all, with how my social media life was, and also how politics was, and how those two related. And I posted at the end of last week, I think it was, that I was going on a social media diet specifically relating to politics. So what I did last week was I unfollowed a bunch of basically any news account that was tweeting about politics, like whether they're a person, whether they're a news organization. There are a few people that I knew that I still wanted to be following them, so I just muted them, so I can go back and at least see, like, oh, I've muted these people. Now I can unmute them if I want to end this. But it ended up being super successful. And so the other thing I did as part of this, before I get into why it was so successful, is I also decided if I see a news clip that features CNN and more than one person talking, that I do not watch that video because basically actually I should find a link to it. There's a video from Vox that came out a couple months ago talking about how CNN is basically just political reality TV now, and they actually hire people who are basically effectively not literally programmed like a robot, but programmed to have different points of view. They represent the person that they're kind of talking about, and they're basically just caricatures of whatever point of view they were hired to have. And I noticed that there are a couple of otherwise respectable newspapers that hired these like kind of editorial columnists that were very controversial. There was that one guy who posted the opinion piece about climate change, and he's like, well, maybe it's okay to be skeptical of climate change, and everyone like totally rightly said, this is ridiculous, why are you doing this? Like, I think I forget if it was New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, but one of those like otherwise very respectable publications.
Oh yeah, was that the one where that meme of the lady and the guy in the car, and it's like, get in, punk, we're going climate change denying.
No, that was that was a more recent one. That was that NBC? Wherever Megyn Kelly is now. She had an interview with Alex Jones.
Yeah, that guy.
That's a whole other
Okay.
hilarious thing. So I don't know how much you heard about that story,
No.
but there was this
I just saw
big
the
thing.
meme.
Yeah, she posted like, "Oh, I'm visiting InfoWars is the website. I'm visiting the studio to interview Alex Jones," and then everyone was like completely outraged because she had just come from Fox and gotten this new job, and here she is now interviewing Alex Jones. And it
But
turns
who's
out
Alex Jones?
he is a like right wing. He's the new, younger, hipper Rush Limbaugh.
I was
If you
gonna
can,
say he kind of looks like Rush Limbaugh a little
yeah,
bit, or
there's
same
definitely
type of guy. Yeah.
yeah. So she interviewed him, and then about 24 to 48 hours before the interview came out, he was like, so we secretly recorded a bunch of conversations with their whole team as they were doing this interview and doing this whole media thing. And so he released like vast sections of the tape. He's as though it was some big like treasure trove of information, like conflicting and all this, just trying to like cause a shitstorm to brew. And I just like I didn't watch the interview for obvious reasons. Like I said, I'm first of all trying to avoid this, but it's also like it's literally just reality TV at this point, and there's nothing to be actually gained from that kind of discourse. And it turned out to be completely justified because the whole thing was like basically just for ratings by both. Like both were playing like, oh, if we get Alex Jones on, people will watch because he's controversial. And Alex Jones was like, wow, if I get on an interview, then I can do all this like data gathering and just like send it to the press.
But I thought there was a aspect of climate change denying with Alex Jones. I remember maybe there's something
he has
else.
a number of conspiracy theories that he repeats. He was sued successfully by a brand of yogurt called Chobani. He was
I've heard of them
ranting
before.
against them. I don't even remember what like it was a stupid conspiracy theory. There's some like he talks about I think chemicals in the in water sources making frogs gay, like that kind of ridiculous conspiracy theory.
Okay.
And he was big on one of the biggest reasons that people were concerned about having him on. I think it was NBC. Was the fact that he calls Sandy Hook a conspiracy.
Oh, that's what it was. It was Sandy Hook, not climate change. Yeah. I think I was confusing the two.
I'm fairly certain it wouldn't be misrepresenting him to say that he probably doesn't think climate change is real, or at least his character on his show doesn't.
Sure.
He's kind of like the real life Stephen Colbert, like in my opinion. And Stephen Colbert has done a regular segment for a while he was big in the news. Alex Jones, he did a thing every few days where he would just make fun of him for like by playing a kind of conservative character the same way he did on his show. But Alex Jones is like the real life version of that, honestly. And so all of that to be said, I didn't watch the interview. I'm purposely staying away from people that seems like if you're not just reporting things that are going on, and if you're just having people talk at each other to have people want to watch because it's controversial, then I just avoid it. And it's been like it's really helped with my kind of just peace of mind and sanity, feels like.
Right. So
I would recommend if you see a lot of people posting, even if it's like posting news reports is one thing, but if your life is full of politics, like just take some time. If you're feeling overwhelmed, just take some time and step back, and things will be fine. If like the CGP Grey approach, if it gets through like if you put up a barrier and stuff trickles through, that's okay. You'll get the important news regardless.
Yeah. I was gonna say that's kind of the approach I've taken, is if something's important enough to look more into, then your current filter bubble will let it through, kind of. And not to the point of trying to get into like an echo chamber type thing, but just more like if I see, whatever school shooting, it's like, wow, that's horrible, but I won't look more into it. But if I like continually for a couple of days keep seeing people talking about it, then it's like, okay, maybe I should like look a bit more into this.
Right.
But I think with the way that the internet and social media specifically works now is like you hear about everything all the time.
Yep.
So if you try to keep up with everything and react to everything, that's all that your life's going to be.
Yep.
But I think if you wait until you hear enough about something, like say with like the United debacle, the ongoing one, I guess still, but at least for the time being when it was coming about. Well, I mean, like one thing after another, but the initial thing with like the passenger abuse, I heard enough people were talking about it that I'm like, oh, maybe this is a big deal. Like, and then I looked into it a bit more and learned a bit more about it. And again, like it wasn't reacting to it, but it just trying to learn more about it. So I was aware of it. But yeah, like there's so many things on a daily basis that's like, oh, so-and-so did whatever, like said something. It's like, I'll read through it, but I'm not going to process it any further than just the initial reading of it so that I can recall, oh yeah, I read something about that, but I didn't look too much into it because
Right.
that would just be way too burdensome on me to look into every single thing.
Yeah. There's also a certain aspect for me, at least, where I'm made aware through mostly probably Twitter. I'm passively made aware that things have happened,
Right.
but I don't actually like, it's not that I look at the headline and I don't read the article and then I like talk to other people as though I know what it's about.
Right.
That is pretty irresponsible that people do. But I'll see a story and I'll be like, oh, now like in my head, I'm aware that that thing is a thing. So if people talk about it, I instantly have a connection to be like, oh yeah, what happened? Like, tell me more about it. But
Right.
I don't have to, if it's not important, if it doesn't seem important enough to me to actually read the article, then I'm totally fine not. Like if something happened with Katy Perry over the weekend, like some kind of stupid celebrity interaction, then I can be made like I can go like, oh yeah, and we can skip ahead to the point in the conversation where we don't have to just be like,
Right.
oh yeah, that thing that happened. I'm just instantly like, oh yeah, that I saw that somewhere on Reddit or on Twitter or something.
Yeah. There's that one day where like with after the last it was during like the Ariana Grande concert.
Yeah.
And I started hearing people talk about Ariana Grande and Terrorist Attack. I'm like, I wouldn't expect to see those two things put together.
Right.
So I looked into it then.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was like, oh, it was some kind of like random Twitter beef or whatever. Like someone said something about Ariana Grande and I didn't really go much further than that, but it was one of those things where I was like aware of what it was vaguely,
Right.
but I didn't look too much further into it. But yeah, like I'm of the same mindset. It's like, oh, I'll try to acknowledge something as being a thing, but I generally won't look too much further into it.
Right. This is a separate thing than the attack at her concert?
No, that was the same thing.
Okay.
That's the thing I was talking about. I hadn't heard about until I saw on Twitter
Right.
someone saying about. I honestly don't even remember. That's how passing the
there was a guy that made a
acknowledgement of it
joke
was.
about it, I think.
Yeah, no, yeah, there was
Okay.
something about Ariana Grande concerts being bad, or I don't even know what it was, but
And it's
made
just like
up,
such a poor taste joke.
yeah, it just made a poor taste joke.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, whatever, like,
Right.
but
Okay, that makes sense. I thought you were saying that the entire story was like a non-story. I'm like, no, that was a pretty big.
Oh no,
thing.
no,
But
just
the
just
joke
thing
was
like
the
Ariana Grande and the
that makes
joke,
sense.
right? Yeah, and the reaction from and people are getting upset about it. I'm like, oh, it's like whatever, like
Yeah, people are gonna make bad taste jokes. Just maybe don't follow that person or something. Yeah.
But anyway, no, I'm glad to hear that your efforts to clean up your news cycle has been successful. And like I had noticed that you were, especially during the Trump election campaign, was getting kind of spiraling out of control a little bit.
I was super excited to be like for North America to be like a liberal paradise. And yeah, I'm still not like, I said at the beginning that it seems like this government isn't going to be competent enough to really get a lot done, whether it's bad or whether it's good. And I'm trying really, really hard to not just have a gut reaction to anything that happens. Like they announced an initiative. I guess it was like the timeline of things is ridiculous to me, but I heard an initiative they announced that they want to modernize government systems. And like, I'm totally on board with that. I think that would be super useful because you keep hearing about backlogs in all kinds of government departments. And as long as gutting it, like as long as modernizing it doesn't just mean like closing offices and firing people, and like that is a short-term cost saving measure technically. And I guess that might be their goal. But like when we had the deficit reduction action plan, which was basically like thin out government a few years ago under Harper, all it did was fire a bunch of people for like 2 yees, and then they all got immediately hired back because the government was running too thin. Like it just, you can't, all they've done is not, all the states has done is not fill their government posts. So if by modernize the systems, they just mean have less people, then I don't think it's going to work that well. But if they actually want to modernize systems, I'm all for that. I don't care that it's the party that mostly disagrees with my thoughts that suggested it. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. And the good and bad thing, I guess, but just the thing in general is that as easily as a government or the administration is able to undo things
Mm.
or institute things, the next government can do the same.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So like nothing's forever, nothing's permanent. And,
Yeah.
that might seem like a sweeping generalization, but I think it holds mostly true when it comes to government stuff.
Yep.
So yeah, I think a lot of people are just treating the next 3.5 years as a write-off, maybe.
Yeah.
Kind of just as far, just
so.
emotionally, just an
Yeah.
emotional write-off, right? It's like, okay, well, it is what it is. It's not worth being worked up over it, but
I also have to keep my kind of we have a certain distance from it not being directly affected. So I have to kind of step backwards and say, as bad as this is for me to have to think about, I'm not living it. So like I can't go and call US Congress people and be like, by the way, this is maybe a bad idea. And so we have to kind of keep a distance. And I did notice, I read a thing, actually, I think I posted it too. Apparently Canada's plan to deal with all of this is like they understand the fact that the United States is actually a bunch of united states that are governed in general by a federal leader, but a lot of like Republican values have a lot to do with like states' rights, which is what they call it, the individual states having control over most stuff.
yeah.
And so apparently like the Trudeau government and just even Canada's provincial governments have been bypassing the federal government branches and just dealing directly with local or state governments
In the US.
in a lot of ways. Yeah. Like
right.
dealing with, and individual states are all like, well, our state is going to do all this stuff on climate change still. Like we're still going to go with these agreements in the Paris Agreement. And I just find it so funny that while it seems like government is broken sometimes, it still works. Like it still trends towards progress in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And I think like with how big the states is both population wise and size, like area, that model of states having a lot more autonomy does make sense.
Yep.
Because the states, like the state governments, will have more awareness of what the people want. Whereas the federal government, they're going to make decisions based on, or recommendations based on like the overall well-being. But I think the state should still have a level of overriding effects on that. If they just like gay marriage is a perfect example of that, right? Like there's some states that are 99% for it. There's some that are 99% against it. And that's within their right, within the, like, I mean, whether it's good or bad, that's its own discussion. But like with the way the state government set up, it's within their right to do what's best for their people, for what their people want, I guess, right? So it's a two-sided coin.
Yeah, and it's not like there's not going to be any legislation at a federal level to say if you are a church, you have to marry gay people. Like that, no individual church has to marry anybody. It's the fact that you can't, like the government, you can't deny someone a civil union if you like, that's not something, you don't have that right to deny someone that, but it doesn't mean you specifically have to marry that person unless you are a civil servant, and then you kind of have to, like, you're a government employee. You're not projecting your personal beliefs onto anybody that you're dealing with. You are like systematically going through what the law says.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think people don't really separate that all that well. Okay, so I'm done with politics for now. I said I would let you lead this discussion because I think have played a lot more video games than I have, but that's kind of where I think you wanted to start.
Like Pokemon Go being a exclusively mobile game that's a first for me to be this involved in. But prior to that, like I've grown up my later half childhood playing video games, like computer games for the most part. Like I had like a PC which I played games on, then we had an N64 growing up. Then I played Xbox at friends' houses, mostly between Xbox, N64 and PC is kind of my experience with computer games and video games. So I've always enjoyed them. More game specific, like I've played games varying from like NHL to Zelda to Counter Strike to a lot of different types of games. But again, a mobile game, I think, at least since the dawn of the smartphone and having a bit more kind of involved games than like a solitaire kind of brick
Yeah.
break type game.
Yeah.
Uh, I hadn't really been involved in anything like that until Pokemon Go.
Right.
I think probably the groundbreaking game of its type was something like Clash of the Clans, Clash of Clans, Clash of the
Clash
Clans.
of Clans. I think there are lots of
Um,
clones. Clash of
yeah,
Clones of Clans.
right. I think I even saw like a joke of like a video game name generator, and it was
Right.
like
Yeah.
War of Knights or whatever, right? Like it just
Yeah.
kind of build your own name. But yeah, so those types of games, and then you had like Ingress, which is kind of had its cult following. I don't know if it ever got as big as something like Clash of Clans, but
No, probably not.
it was probably had similar following as like Pokemon Go does now.
Mhm.
Maybe
Well,
even that I'm
so
not entirely sure.
Ingress was big because it was at the time Niantic, the company that develops both Pokemon Go and Ingress, was under Google, and so Google
Okay,
they had
right?
to
Yeah, I remember
resources
that now.
to be able to be like global. That was the thing that I'll let you finish what you were going to say, but the thing that's different about Pokemon Go for me, and I played Ingress a tiny bit, but it was I'm much more comfortable with the lingo of Pokemon because I am kind of familiar with it. Whereas otherwise with Ingress, it was just a bunch of random names of things and it was hard to tell which things referred to what. But those games, like Pokemon Go especially, the first game I played where that it matters where you are, like physically where you are on the world makes a big difference. Whereas other games, even games like Solitaire with a deck of cards, it was the same game wherever you were. But
Right,
and I think that's one of the things that made it harder for other people to really understand because they're like, "Well, why can't you just play the game when you have some spare time?" I'm like, "No, I need to be at a spot at a time." And for a lot of people that doesn't really work for them because it doesn't necessarily fit into their schedule, but I've wanted to make time to fit it in my schedule to actually I'm like, if we're driving down a busy street, Julia's like, don't play while we're driving. And I'm like, but we're on the street that it has all the stuff. Like, I don't need to play I don't need to play when we get there because there's nothing happening there,
right,
but there's all this stuff happening.
right.
It's interesting.
Yeah, so getting into Pokemon Go, like the other game that I played as a kid was Pokemon on the Game Boy,
Mhm.
and so I played Pokemon Blue and had Squirtle as my starter, and used Blastoise for every battle, like literally every battle,
Literally.
and then when I got Zapdos, because Zapdos was the legendary bird I picked, or in Pokemon,
Mhm.
and I used it every battle, again regardless of who I was battling. And I was still able to beat the Elite Four, so I
Okay.
guess take that for real. That being said, I did use like the missing no glitch to just generate a bunch of rare candies and level up all my Pokemon.
Okay.
So that probably helped a lot too.
See, this
Um,
is context that I never I think I have played the Game Boy games, but it was very
okay.
briefly and it wasn't my Game Boy.
Okay.
And so I'm aware of missing no, but I have no idea what you're referring to when you
So,
say
right. So the missing no glitch is you fly to a specific island. I think it was Cinnabar in the game, and you surf up and down this one coast. I think you have to talk to a guy, and then you surf up and down this coast and you keep swimming. And if you encounter Pokemon, you run away from it, keep swimming, swimming, swimming up and down this coast. And eventually you encounter this, what was called missing no, because it
yeah,
was like in the game,
it's
it was
like the
like
glitch.
missing, it was like missing number,
Right.
like missing NO, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it was called missing no. And it was like the sprite, like the image of the Pokemon was just like a bunch of like boxes, like glitchy boxes kind of thing, like
Mhm.
almost like a barcode.
Right.
Because again, there was like no data for it, but you could encounter it, and then you catch it, and then when you catch it and you have it in your party and you go to like a Pokestop, then you can duplicate your items, like just
Okay.
have as many as you want. Like, so like rare candies were one of those things that would level up your Pokemon
Right.
immediately. Like they'd lose some of their strength versus if they got that level through experience.
Right.
But the rare candies always still helped, right?
Hmm.
So you could level up your Pokemon really fast and just do that. And that's what I
Right.
did.
Now,
So,
was that like I assume by now we know, was that a glitch that happened to work, or was that an Easter egg that they put in?
well, it was a glitch, but because it was a glitch that would have been fixed nowadays because you just push an update,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But back then, like you ship the game, like it has a glitch, like you
But it
can't do
seems
anything
weird that
about it.
how would the like it seems odd to me that the glitch in that Pokemon would let you kind of use an infinite duplicator.
I don't know what the exact
Yeah.
mechanics of the glitch were, but
Right.
it
It
worked
worked.
in the way it did. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then there's a chance of it like bricking your game, or
Okay.
at least your file, at least your save file.
Yeah.
And I think that is what ended up happening to mine.
Right.
So I mean, you're
Yeah.
like a 12-year-old, so you don't really care.
Good and
Like
bad.
you
Yeah.
just yeah. Anyway, that was my past experience with Pokemon. So when Pokemon Go, when I first saw the trailer for it and the news that it was coming out, I'm like, oh, this is awesome! Like,
Mhm.
right? Because there's all the Gen 1
Yeah.
Pokemon that I was familiar with. Like I collected cards when I was a kid too.
Yeah.
So like the nostalgia factor and the familiarity for it really was a big appeal to me. So that's how I got into that. And yeah, like you, I was familiar with all the terms, like the mechanics of like types and
Yeah.
fighting, like the battles, all that kind of stuff, catching them, obviously. So yeah, that was all really appealing to me. And the aspect of having to be in a certain place, that was definitely a new uh, consideration
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
games in general. And so I've got a lot out of it. Like we've built a little kind of community between some of the people within the neighborhood I'm in and a couple of the neighboring neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And so we'll help each other with gyms and like just talk about the game and say,
Yeah.
oh, there's like a nest of Pokemon wherever, and go do that kind of thing. So it's been really good for uh, keeping me engaged in a game like a game hasn't been able to before.
Right.
Like a lot of times I'll just lose interest in the game, especially if I'm playing it by myself. Like playing with friends, if you're playing like Halo, right? Like
Yeah.
you're there to hang out with friends, and the game is an activity you're doing together.
Yeah.
Like you're not there to like, I mean, some people are really into the game, but generally like I'm going to go hang with friends and screw around on the video game for a bit,
Yeah.
and you're not taking it too seriously, right? But
Yeah.
when I'm left to just do it myself, I'll lose interest pretty quickly.
Mhm.
But this one is managed to kind of keep my interest as long as it's working,
Yeah.
and it's having new content, which is its own discussion. But
The comparison to Halo and like shooters on multiplayer games I find interesting because at first the first kind of multiplayer that came out was, I guess for me at least that I can think of, probably Nintendo, where you'd have two controllers and like side by side you could two
yeah,
people could be playing at once. But then some like things like first person shooters and Halo came out where you'd have a network connection. And so at that point where you were didn't matter as long as you had fast internet connection.
you're talking about like online
Yeah,
first person shooters,
online
yeah,
multiplayer.
yeah, right,
But you still had to coordinate time to be at
yeah,
the same time. You had to meet up, and then you could battle with each other and like against each other or with like as a team. But this kind of Pokemon kind of combines both, especially now with the new raids, where like time and place both matter. You don't just have to be online at the same
hmm
time. You don't just have to be in the same place, but you both have to line up. And there's also an aspect of the game itself. Like you're not setting the time with your friends. The game is setting the time, and you have to show up at
right,
a spot at a time and coordinate with people if you want
right.
to actually get something.
At least in its current implementation.
Yes,
Well,
exactly.
like that's always changing. So
Yeah.
what have you felt that you've got out of the game? Because you said like your past history with games has generally been what? Like you said, you played Pokemon a bit, and what other types of
Well,
games did you
I think
have?
I played mostly Pokemon a bit. Most of my experience with that game specifically, I believe, was the cards. Like I mostly trade. I think I probably traded a little bit at school, but mostly it was like I know I traded with you. I know I had some cards that
Yeah.
we like. I forget if we ever actually played the game.
Well, that's the other part. Like as a kid, again, this is all for the eyes of a 12-year-old, but
Yeah.
like you're like looking at the cards, like, oh, I'll use this attack. Okay, I'll use this attack, and I don't think you even like
No.
did anything. You're just like, oh, you're dead. Like,
Yeah.
like because
Yeah.
we didn't even use like energy cards or like the
Mhm.
damage counters or like the effects cards or anything like that. We just like energy cards are boring. Like, why would you want a
Yeah.
bunch of energy cards?
We did play. I did play Magic for a while too,
Okay. I think I
which
remember you had
was
some Magic cards.
yeah,
I
it
remember
was
that.
like the
Yeah.
grown-up version of Pokemon in my mind.
Right. Well, I mean,
It
people
was
still play it.
yeah, oh yeah, people like it's
Yeah.
bigger now than it was then, if anything.
Yeah.
But mostly because there's a niche for everyone, so you can find a giant community of millions of people doing a very very specific thing that anyone else would consider nerdy, which is kind of what Pokemon Go is. Like everyone's like like
Oh,
if
Pokemon Go's
if
super nerdy.
if you well exactly kind of embrace it, but if you run into someone who like if I'm as a 30-year-old person, almost 30, run into someone who's 35 or 25, whatever in that range, and doesn't play or has never played it but has heard of it, they're like, "Oh, you play that game? You're so nerdy. Like, why? What do you even like about it? It's so childish." But then you can run into like I did yesterday. You can run into like 40 something couple that are playing. They said they told me that their kid also plays and has an account, and but it was just the two of them, and they were out doing a raid, and because we both played, we had that connection. Neither of us, we both got that why the other person was doing it. And we might have been doing it for different reasons. Like if they mostly play with their kid, then that makes complete sense. But I get the sense that they don't, because they were like, if you're playing with a child and you both are playing at the same time, like not sharing a phone, then you're not going to like, they were level 31 and 29 or something. Like that takes dedication. You're not just going to get that playing part time. And so I really get that. And I would never, I've in this, I've kind of learned to not take any person's hobby, whether it be a game, whether it be a show, whatever, not to take it and be like, oh, why do you like that? But be like, understand that people get different things out of different activities. And
Yep.
like the politics discussion we had earlier, like I get, like I really am trying to empathize with people and understand that just because I don't like something doesn't mean that no one else can. I've really liked the game for that reason. Most of the games that I've played have been like over the last few years, it's been mobile games, but it's been just like time wasting things where if I have 5 minutes, I'll play a level of Candy Crush or play some random game like
Mhm.
the hit of the week for me. And before that, I had a Nintendo, but I think we had or Super Nintendo, I guess, if I want to be pedantic. Um,
That's
we
not
I think we only
pedantic. It's
had
an entirely different system.
no, that's what I mean. But like it was a Nintendo to me. I didn't call it Super Nintendo. I just called it my like I didn't have
Right.
both, so it was
Sure.
just my
For
Nintendo
you, it was
system.
the Nintendo. Yeah. Right.
And we only had 3 or 4 games, and I didn't really like. I wasn't at the time. I guess I was little, so I didn't really. We had Donkey Kong Country. We had this weird game that I can't remember what it was called, but it had like night, and you'd fight monsters.
It's Ghost Ghouls, Super Ghosts and Ghouls.
Oh, that sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had a basketball game.
Yeah. That one was bad. I
I
don't like that
love
one.
that game. Um, but so
So
yeah,
just for background, whenever I came, actually, more when my brother and I came over
yeah,
to your house, I remember that we'd always like be like, I want to play Nintendo first because there's only two controllers, obviously,
yeah,
because it's Super
yeah.
Nintendo, not N64. And so I know that was always drama, but yeah, I think we liked the Donkey Kong and the Super Ghosts and Ghouls. The Super Ghosts and Ghouls is really hard, actually.
It was really hard,
Yeah,
like
but
surprisingly.
yeah, but I remember the Donkey Kong Country quite well.
Yeah, I loved that basketball game for a while. Like there was a couple of years where it was very frustrating to me that I couldn't just hit 3 pointers easily off balance, but that was just like the game being realistic.
Right.
But yeah, so that was the majority of my kind of
Yeah. Well,
console gaming.
oh, wait, console gaming. Yeah. Right.
And then like we obviously haven't gotten into the aspect of PC games. Like you, for me, it was more soccer than anything else. But I also did play some um, football. No, football was probably also consoles, but later in life. But I played soccer a lot on PC, and you played hockey. I
I played
forget what
hockey.
NHL year it was.
I played like all the NHLs. I
Yeah,
started in like 2000, or started in 1999,
yeah.
NHL 99, and I did every year after that except for I think 2004, 2005.
hmm Well, it was
No,
lockout.
2003, 2000. Actually, from 2002 to 2005, I didn't buy them because in my mind they were all
They're
the
very
same.
similar.
Like you'd still get roster updates. Like you could still
Yeah,
download roster updates for the older versions,
Yeah.
and that was all I was really interested in.
Mhm.
And then 2006, I think I started buying them again. But in between, I did like Madden. I
Mhm.
played FIFA. I played, yeah, like NHL, Madden, and FIFA. Those ones. I played. I think I bought baseball, like MLB, but I didn't play it that much.
I had a baseball game too on PC.
Yeah.
Like the more I think about it, the more I'm like, oh no, I did. Like I played, was it Age of Empires? Like I played
Okay.
quite a few games, but they're
Right.
mostly on the computer, like on PC.
Yeah. And I played. I can't remember if I mentioned. I played Counter Strike as a kid too. Like we had an internet cafe that was next to the high school that I went
Right.
to, and on my spares, I'd go over there
Mhm.
and play for a bit. So that was fun.
Yeah. Actually, the my probably my first experience, even before Super Nintendo, was Windows 95. We had, I think it was like 7 floppy disks worth of games that
Right.
were like I installed on our computer, and like I know command line because of those games. Like that was what I had. I had to go in. I had to leave Windows and go into the command line and open these games. Like there was a Trolls game. There was like, I forget if it was Duke Nukem or some like
Yeah. I
similar.
think you guys had the Incredible Machine too,
Yeah.
probably.
I don't think we did. I
I
know.
played it first somewhere, and I'm pretty sure I played at your guys' house first.
I don't think we had it. I think it was Taylor that
Really?
had it.
Oh, maybe.
I remember playing it at his house.
Okay.
But yeah, that's our uncle for people who aren't in our family. Not some like random friend. But yeah, we didn't have it because I loved that game, but I didn't get to play it as much as I wanted.
Yeah.
But we like every time I now think about it, we've had a ton of experience with different games, and this like currently feels completely different than that. Like you can't just like with kind of gaming being what it is for at least for me now, the thought of sitting down at my desktop computer and playing a game doesn't really hold any appeal to me. Like the most stationary gaming I'll do, other than just sitting on the couch like playing a mobile game, is like Wii tennis or Wii bowling or something. I can't imagine the thought of playing first person shooter now, just with my lifestyle being what it is.
Right. Yeah,
But
I'm
yeah.
the same way. Like I downloaded Age of Empires because I was looking for a game to get into and was recommended that. But
Mhm.
like I played it for a couple hours when I first downloaded it, but I just, even if I have a couple hours to kill, like I don't really feel like just going and sitting in front of the computer. And like I'd
Yeah.
rather just read Twitter.
Yeah,
Like I don't know.
exactly.
I don't know why. Like it's really weird, but
Yeah.
I just don't find like just sitting and playing a game for a couple hours, like that kind of game, that
Mhm.
entertaining. But like meanwhile, like later today, I'm planning on going in and playing Pokemon for a couple hours and doing some raids and just
Yeah.
like, and again, maybe because it is ever changing and trying to figure out new stuff and doing it with other people, like with you guys and like with the group that I have on the same team, like I feel that that keeps me engaged in it, like
Yeah.
seeing other people playing it too. So
Mhm.
I can totally appreciate why if someone's playing on their own and they don't have that same sort of like network, that they'd probably lose interest pretty quickly and wonder why, like, oh, you're still playing that. It's like, well, yeah, like when other people are playing it,
Yeah.
then generally like you'll be more likely to stay engaged
Yeah.
for sure.
I am very curious because I don't think we've talked about it in a little bit of detail, but not a lot. How did you come across people like in your neighborhood that play? Was it through word of mouth or like running into them, or was it like through Reddit or something?
Like, well, so when Pokemon Go first came out, like the local Facebook groups came up pretty quickly, like the pages on there.
Okay.
So there's like a main Pokemon Go page for Calgary, and then there's like team specific pages that
Mhm.
popped up. So obviously, like a couple of them popped up all at the same time, but people kind of just stuck to one, and one
Right.
kind of rose and came to the
Yeah.
top. So, um, in the main team page, so between the three of them, like being on Instinct, like I looked for other Instinct players to be involved with because,
Mhm.
like you're alluding to, like it's very specific on where you are
Yeah.
and to some extent what time you're playing,
Mhm.
at least as far as the amount of support you can get for some of the objectives in the game. So I figured it would help to have a knowledge of who else was playing because, like in the gyms, you see like the same names kind of pop up. So
Yep.
you hope to be able to collaborate with them, right?
Mhm.
So on the main team page for Calgary, like I just said, like, hey, looking for other Cranston players, right? And then I just started like a Facebook chat group and slowly but surely added a couple names. And then there's another group in one of the next communities next over to us. And, there's like 4 to 5 of them there. So then they're like, oh, let's just like join the 2 groups.
Yeah.
And then, so that brought the total up to like 9 or 10 people. And then a couple people in like the next community over were like, oh, there's like 2 or 3 of us. Let's join that one. Right. So then it kind of turned into like 3 or 4 communities that all just kind of collaborate together. And like all of us drive. Like when you're having that many communities, like you have to have a bigger mode of transportation than just walking. Yeah. Like when you're downtown, it's way easier because there's the density of the stops and the gyms are way more. But when you're in the suburbs, you have to, if you want to kind of get the most out of the game, you're typically going to have to drive. So like most of us just play on our commutes and just kind of let each other know when the gyms are open and say, hey, back in the day when you're opening up spots, you'd say, oh, there's 2 spots here, 1 spot here, whatever. Or say I was this close to being to the next level. And then people will kind of go over and jump in there. Right.
Yeah.
Cause we all kind of set aside about a half hour before, like an extra half hour to kind of play a bit before going off to work.
Right.
And that's typically when we do our collaboration kind of thing. And then we'll let people know throughout the day and say, oh, it's this level. And then people might stop on their way home and, do whatever. Like all these people, they're all working people like our age, which is like so weird. Like I think most of the people that play fairly actively are like the 18 to 35.
Yeah.
18 to 35 age group. Right. And we're all just playing in our spare time, like between our commutes or when we have a couple hours, like maybe not even a couple hours, just, going out to do groceries, you stop at a gym on the way home kind of thing, right? Like no one's spending like full days grinding it out. Like some people do, and that's fine. That's great that they get that out of the game. And I probably would too if I had that much time.
Yeah.
But I feel that I get a lot out of the game just doing it when I find the time.
Yeah. I honestly think it would be super fun to take like a week of vacation and just staycation and play. 'Cause I think like it might get boring by the end, but if you commute downtown, like to an urban area where there's a lot going on, it's very dense. I think if you dedicated, I think it would be a lot more fun for someone who plays the game, be a lot more fun and cost a lot less than any kind of vacation anywhere. Because you could even spend like $20 or $30 a day and like do a bunch of raids. You could get a bunch of premium stuff, incubators. You'd first of all be super healthy because like yesterday we weren't even like, now that I have the Apple Watch, not only for tracking distance and stuff, but it also shows me even if I'm not doing an actual workout where I'm tracking distance, it shows me how far I've walked that day, not just the number of steps, but the actual distance. Like yesterday we went to the mall and I went on a couple of poker walks and got 10 kilometers of walking. Like that's a very healthy day of walking. And having a vacation like that, where you could spend, even if you spent $100 in Pokemon, like funnel the $100 into the game, and like bus tickets or a bus pass if you already have it, or biking, like you said, it would be a super healthy vacation where you could have a ton of fun and meet people in your city. And like if something interesting is going on, you're there and you're not doing anything. So you could just go, like if there's a festival or if there was some show or anything, you could just go, and I think that would be super interesting. But actually on that note, you could also make a vacation out of a vacation if you're already somewhere that has things. I know when I went to Niagara last summer, I spent a little bit of time, not much because it was it was on vacation with my wife, but there was a little bit of aspect of like discovering what was around there. And that was also super fun and interesting because like everywhere you go in this particular game, it's slightly different. Like you might see a bunch of some Pokemon that you rarely see in your hometown.
Yeah. It's so funny seeing people like during the Fire and Ice event, people talking about like, oh, I can finally like get my pillow swine. I'm like, I literally have 1,400 swin of candies. Like
I got one on the first day.
Yeah.
I'm evolving it. Yeah.
Actually the pillow swine was the first Gen 2 Pokemon I caught. Because I saw like a shadow in my thing. I was like, oh, that looks like a really good Pokemon. Like, because it was big. And I think I heard about like the Ursaring. Like this is when I was like, I don't even know what these ones are. But like the shadow kind of looked like Ursaring. I was like, oh, sweet. And then I was like, what the heck is this thing? Like
it ended up being good.
It was fine, yeah, but I wanted Ursaring,
Like a
but
cloister. Yeah.
right. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, like we're going on holiday in September and into the States, so I'm pretty excited because they have like the travel roaming data sims that you can get,
Yes.
like that you just swap in.
Have
So I'm gonna
you, do you have
use
one?
that. No, I haven't got one yet. There's one provider that was fairly new. I think I read a thing on Mobile Syrup on it, but it
Mhm.
was like 30. I think it was $30 for 5 gigs for 2 weeks, which seemed
Yeah.
reasonable.
I guess if it's a 2 week, that might end up
Yeah,
working
like a
out
15
better.
day 15-day pass. Yeah.
If
What
if
were you
it
gonna suggest?
isn't if it isn't Roam Mobility you're looking at,
No,
I
it
would
wasn't
suggest
Rome.
looking
It
at
was
Roam
different.
Mobility because
Okay.
they have it's $5 a day and it gets you 500 megs of LTE per day, but you get it all up front. So like if you purchase a 2 week plan, it would be $70, I guess, which is a lot, but then it would get you seven
That's
gigabytes right away.
no 3.5. Oh, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No,
So
I
when
think
I
the
went,
third $30 for 5 gigs, I think is
yeah,
probably better for
and
what
I
we need.
that was the per day. They do have
Right.
longer plans that
Okay.
give you more data for cheaper, but it's
Right.
worth taking a look because like I've had
Okay.
that now for 2 years. I think I got it the first when maybe a year and a half. I got it when I went to New York for 3 days, and it was amazing having 1.5 gigs of data and a number that like an
Mm.
actual phone number people could call
Oh,
that
because
was
it wasn't
local
just
to it.
data. It
Yeah.
was
Oh, sorry, it was
minutes too.
unlimited messaging and
Oh,
calling,
okay. Oh, that's
and it gave
decent.
you a local number, and it had that
Right.
data.
Oh, okay.
So to be clear, it was the LTE was capped at 500 megs a day, but then you had once you went over that cap for your length of time, it was still 2G. I think probably it would default to 3G because most 2G
On a
place things don't actually have
per megabyte plan? On a per
no like
megabyte rate?
unlimited.
Oh, what?
The LTE was maxed, and then
Oh,
it
that's
it
sweet.
throttled you after that.
2G or 3G?
Yeah, I think it said 2G, but I think every time I've heard, oh, it's a 2G plan, it's actually been updated because there's no 2G network anymore.
Hmm.
I'd want to look into it again if I was planning on
Right.
going over a plan. But like, I've also had every time someone I know goes to the States for any time, like Julia went last summer for a couple
Mhm.
days, and like you just activate it, purchase a plan, and then you can keep using that same SIM. And it's worked out super well. Like, I've had 2 or 3 different people make use of it.
How much does the SIM cost? Like the
10
upfront?
bucks. I think sometimes they have 50% off offers, but like they'll
Oh,
mail it to you
that's
for 10
okay.
bucks.
That's better than this other one too. I think this other one was like a 25 or $30 SIM cost.
Yeah.
So it might
It's
actually
worth at
work
least
out to be
looking into.
cheaper. Yeah, I'll look into it for sure.
They have a lot of different plans, and they have different plans for I think Mexico as well. Like they have a
Hmm.
snowbird plan for people for longer term if you
Right.
like if you vacation in Florida for the winter or whatever. Yeah.
Hmm. Cool.
But yeah.
Yeah, anyway, so yeah, well, like you're saying to find in different places
Mhm.
the different types of things. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a
Especially
really
like
cool aspect.
like you're
Especially
planning
which?
like especially if you're going to like whatever latitude Corsola at, like
Oh yeah,
there are regional Pokemon that show up only in certain places.
right. Yeah, no, exactly. Because yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know if Southern California is above or below that. Like I know there's parts of Louisiana
Right.
that are in that
Yeah.
zone, so I'd have to double check.
Yeah.
But,
It's worth a day trip like go south just to see
oh,
what you
first, yeah, right. Just keep driving till you encounter one, right?
Yeah. Uh, yeah, it's funny because like you said earlier, I knew all the Generation 1 Pokemon. Like they were very familiar to me. And I think it was probably mostly from the cards. But then Generation 2 came out, and when they first came out, I was like, "Oh, I'll catch this," but I have no idea what it is. And like
Right,
I think I'd heard of like Wobbuffet because I'd seen the TV show a
right,
little bit, and what was the other one? There was a few that I was familiar with.
right.
Um, but now they're
Well, and like
like,
Cyndaquil and Totodile, like you
yeah,
probably
less
heard of them,
so, but still like I at least was aware of them. But
right?
now like there's very little distinction between
Yeah.
them because we've had them for 6 months or
They're all
almost
the
6
same generation now, effectively. Like at
I
least as
still like the originals more,
yeah.
but I know them all now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember first time I caught like a Dawn fan. I
Yeah.
caught like a wild one, and I was like, "Oh, I caught like this elephant thing."
Mhm.
Like, I didn't even know what it was.
Well, and that's the thing is that when you first catch like all the Gen 2 ones seemed like they really sucked.
Hmm.
When you first evolve a Dawn fan, you're like, oh, this is pretty mid range. But then
Whatever. Yeah.
once you've had it for approximately as long as you've had the Generation 1 ones, you realize like, oh, now mine is 2800 and it's actually
Right.
very competitive and it has fighting moves. So it's
Well, I think that's a good thing with the system that he's put in, like with the CP
yeah, yeah,
rating, like because you can compare like
yeah,
what you know from previous gens to new ones and be like, okay, well, this is like a 1200 CP one, so it's you can say it's almost as strong as whatever, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
to a certain degree, right? And then you look at his type and his attacks, whether that's its own thing. But from a usability or power standpoint, like you can usually go off the CP to kind of compare.
yeah,
So
yeah. I very much enjoyed it.
mhm.
And with all the changes, like we've been talking, like our channel has been more active, even without Nick in it. It's been more active the last few days than it had been for like a month or two earlier
Yeah,
because there just wasn't that much new to talk about and there wasn't that much happening. And now, even though we're all in different cities, we're not coordinating in any way. We're just like sharing our experiences and all of the tweaks and stuff. That was the other thing that you mentioned briefly. You touched on it earlier, the fact that when you got the Pokemon game for Game Boy, like they shipped it to you or you bought it at the
we
store.
bought it. Yeah,
And I guess shipping wasn't really like online shopping wasn't a thing that day.
no,
Um, that's crazy. Anyways,
I meant ship as in like complete,
yeah,
like
yeah,
to ship
exactly.
a
Yeah.
product. Right?
I was thinking of like it getting shipped to you
No,
because that's how you
I
get
meant
stuff
like
now. But yeah,
a developer shipping a product. That's what
yeah,
I meant.
it's the game was done. Whereas
Yeah,
Niantic's shipping Pokemon Go updates, they they can actually not only do they not have to necessarily update the game very often, but they have made a bunch of changes that didn't require a game update to do.
yeah,
And I thought that was interesting just in terms of like I mentioned it in the notes here because I wanted to talk about like it's a form of customer service. It's almost a form of marketing in the way that your like game developers can be responsive to the community. And I really appreciate that Niantic has started engaging with community and taking feedback and iterating quickly. Like
yeah.
it does kind of break the game, but you have to. I don't know if you ever heard this. There's a metaphor that I heard recently that I really liked. That you can't just think about today or tomorrow or even this generation. I want to think about how this, whatever change I'm thinking, whether it's something as small as like a game being updated or whether it's something as big as like tax policy for a country, you can't think about right now. You have to think about how is it going to affect like 5 generations down the road. If you want to, like not five
With
generations,
the
like
available information that you have,
exactly, exactly.
yeah.
And so like you're not necessarily thinking like the lifetime of 5 human beings with like generational gaps, but just like if players that are playing this game now leave and the new players come in and start playing, does it make sense for the game to be the way that it is when they show up? Or do you need to have had the history of all these games to understand why all these things are in there? Like, I already feel like it's kind of getting jam packed with features where it's like you need like an encyclopedic manual to be able to actually figure out what all these things
Mhm.
are. Like, there's a lot of features where you need the history to understand why things are the way they are.
Right. Yeah, like for someone to pick up the game today, brand new, it's not like the in-game stuff isn't entirely self-explanatory.
Right.
Um, but as
They have
far
done
as
better
like,
though. There, I noticed with raids and
yeah,
gyms, there are question marks now that you
yep,
can click to get a little more info.
yeah. So I think that with this latest update, and they have like help pages now, like all
Mm.
those online ones they released with this update.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm sure like their support team, like if you just emailed them or asked them, like they'd probably
Yeah.
explain stuff to you if you needed to. I really liked on Reddit the Niantic support
Yeah. Yeah.
guys like Indigo and George. Like it was so cool. Like during this latest gym release, there were people asking about certain in-game mechanics
Mm.
and how they work, and Niantic George was actually like running these tests in the test
Yeah.
environment and
Yeah. I
reporting
noticed that.
back. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. Like, and then someone's like, when the servers went down, like the trainer club servers went down, and someone's like, oh, hey, Niantic George, can we get like an extra day on the event?
Yeah.
And
And
he's
they did
like,
that.
and he's like, oh, let me look into it. I don't have much pull. It's like, oh, got
Yeah.
approved. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my god, like that's crazy. Like,
And that was a good, like, that was a good decision. It didn't hurt them at all.
yeah,
And people that couldn't, I don't know how much it actually affected the people that did
it was a
have.
full 24 hours that people couldn't get on.
Right, but even then, I don't think the people that got back, I don't think they got their whole extra day back, but it was definitely part of a day. Like it was a good move, but I
Yeah,
don't.
it was as much as they
Yeah, it
probably
was as
would
much as
have
they could have
played
done.
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, but yeah, no, I think the game feedback and same with like the coin
hmm
dispersal, right? Like people are like, oh, this is way too low. Oh,
yeah,
let's increase it.
yeah,
Like just monitoring the feedback. Like,
mhm,
and that's why they do that. And so I can appreciate that part. And like you can only do so much to anticipate what people are going to want. I think there
yeah,
are still a lot of things that should have been different to begin with. It's like
mhm,
if you talk to anyone that would have played,
yeah, exactly.
like they would have said something about it. But I don't like. I think all that being said, I think they're still doing a
Yeah,
good job with
yeah.
responding.
It's tough because you can't let like as if you have a deck of cards, there's only so much that can go wrong when you're testing out how a game works. But there are all kinds of variables, especially in a game that's location aware and like individual to where you are. It Most of the testing presumably happens at their headquarters, which are in urban areas. So it's hard to test rurally when you don't have any, like your headquarters are nowhere near that. And if you're testing features in San Francisco, they may work really great in San Francisco, but they don't work in like Wichita.
Hmm.
And how would you know that? Like Wichita's even a bad example because that's a pretty big city. Um, but it's impossible or very difficult to actually get the full range of play experiences from one
Hmm.
spot. And
Right.
it reminds me of Apple with their when the iPhone 4 came out, they had that antenna gate. Like they did a bunch of network testing, like a bunch, but then they released this phone to millions of people, and suddenly everyone's using it, and it never really it would be really difficult to occur to someone that if your finger ended up on a certain spot and you like squeeze on the cellular band that it would drop signal all of a sudden, but that did happen. And to catch that in testing, it could be caught in testing, but to guarantee that you catch everything like that in testing is super difficult. And even worse, even more so for a game like this, that you can test all these features, and I'm sure they did, but you can't test them under all conditions, even ones like network conditions.
Right.
Yeah. Having like maybe the GPS is super accurate in San Francisco. So like, what do you mean drift? Like, why would your GPS drift? And it's like, well, that happens in lots
Right.
of places. Yeah.
And I guess like coming to like network speeds, like
Mhm.
I'm on generally like 5 to 10 down
Right.
and 2 to 8 up. Maybe we'll call it maybe not even as high as 8, maybe like 2 to 5 up for my 4G or 3G or whatever you want to call it, non LTE. Um, but I don't know how different it would be on LTE because I think like all these glitches that we experience, like everyone's experiencing them, right? So I
Yeah.
honestly don't think network speed is the issue.
No.
Like you just have a lot more people saying, "Oh, I have no issue with that," if that
Yeah.
was the case. And same with like device type. Like device type plays a big
Mhm.
part in like once it overheats, but everyone's devices are overheating and everyone's gets glitchy once it starts overheating. Like some you can stave off the overheating a little bit,
Yeah.
maybe with some of the newer phones, but like ultimately like they're gonna start overheating and that's just how the game is right now.
Yeah.
And I think like from that aspect, like with the new gyms now, I think a lot of people are just tapping and just hoping for the best. Like
Well,
that's the
yeah.
mechanic. That's been the mechanic the whole time. And like the dodging
Yeah.
part, like you can try, but chances are like it's not going to work. And you just kind of roll with it. And it's funny, like they talk about this on ATP all the time. But like being a Windows user, you just get used to like glitches. Like oh yeah, but does that? Oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh you have to do this and this and this. Oh yeah, like oh yeah, sorry that doesn't work. It's like how can you be okay with this, right? But like that's
Yeah.
I think we've gotten to that point with this game. It's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, that's a dodge glitch. Oh yeah, like sometimes it does that. Oh yeah, you have to. It's like, okay, I guess that's just reality now.
For me, I have noticed gradual improvement since the new gyms came out. First of all, like my phone doesn't overheat with the new gyms at all. Like it had at times before, but it doesn't
Okay.
anymore. For In terms of the actual mechanics of battling, I have I'm now like the first day, my first few battles, I was like, oh my God, the damage meter's jumping all over the place, the health meter's jumping all over the place. The counter I think worked pretty well for me, but um it was just crazy to try to figure out what was happening. But now that
Hmm.
things have kind of settled down a little bit, in my experience, I can tell like once I do a charge move, I know that that counter is eventually going to drop. Like it'll take a few seconds, but it will eventually. Like everything does make sense. It's just not showing it right. And same with um, like dodging. I can just kind of dodge where I know a dodge should go, and then it works, and then I just keep going,
So,
and
but what would you do when the defender just stops animating any attack?
I just keep
Like,
going.
but how do you know when to dodge? Like, you don't know when attacks are coming. So,
I
like,
that might be an Android iOS thing because I haven't really. I've
maybe
seen if they're doing a charge attack, I've seen it at the right like the words come up at the right time, even if the animation's slightly delayed. Like I can dodge based on when the thing pops up.
I'm saying when like you get the spinning Pokeball and the defender just stands there. Like you're still able to
Oh
attack.
yeah,
Your attacks are animating, but the defender's not doing anything, and the
I
ball's
haven't
just
had that.
spinning. The timer's still counting down, and you're like, I'm just gonna keep attacking because I have no idea what's going on, right? So you just
Yeah.
keep tap, and just keep attacking. Timer's counting down, and you hope that the server catches up
Hmm.
in time to know what's going on, right? And then possibly your guy will faint, and your new guy will come in, and hopefully you still have time left. Like,
Right.
well, like I posted in the Slack, like that's the process right now
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
me doing the battle, and it's fine. Like I can still, I get my rewards at the end of the attacking, and I can do whatever.
Mhm.
Like, so the pleasure of the game doesn't come from the actual battling experience.
Yeah.
It's just from the activity, being able
Yeah.
to do it.
Right. So yeah, that definitely seems like a bug that at least my phone, but iOS in general doesn't seem to have. Because for me, the only thing that happens is like if I do damage to somebody, especially the charge attacks, like the health will go off them, the opponent, and then it will jump back to where it was before, and
Right.
then it will go down again. And
Right.
like I can count on that happening.
But if that's all I experience, that'd be
Yeah,
fine because
exactly.
then I could do the same thing.
That's
It's
all.
like, well, I know it's there, so like I'm not going to worry
Mhm.
about it, right? And yeah, if the animation's kept up and you do into dodge or whatever, that's fine.
Yeah.
But once it like just freezes everything and doesn't do anything, and this is like network error, it's like, oh my gosh, like.
Yeah.
And I look at my phone bars and it's like full bars, right?
Yeah.
So I
Well,
don't know,
and it
maybe it demands like 10 megabits instead of
I
like, or
don't
maybe
think
15 instead of 10. Like I don't know.
I don't think it is. I think there's a certain amount, like we talk about network congestion, and I think there is a certain aspect of that in this update. But like, I've also noticed that it might just be because so many things depend on servers now, depend on remote servers, and not just like sending a file to a thing and reading that file. I've even had like video chats with Julia or with my family where it just seems like the like Facebook Messenger servers are getting slammed with video calls. And like
Hmm.
if we switch to FaceTime, it's way clearer and way faster. And Pokemon Go seems like the same thing. It's actually the Pokemon Go servers that are the bottleneck. It's not your specific network connection.
Right. Right. For some things, and I was just thinking before, like with a lot of MMORPGs, you'll have, or yeah, Counter Strike or any of those, you'll have different servers that you can connect to, and
Yep.
then your latency will be shown
Yeah.
for each one. So it'd be nice if that was an option. Like if
Yeah. Yeah.
Niantic had set up different servers and they can choose which one you want to connect to, or it auto connects you to the lowest
Mhm.
latency one
Yeah.
depending on your network speeds, right? So I don't know, maybe that would be a going forward thing. Like, because yeah, there's a ton, like I think probably even more than Ingress requires, like a lot of
Yeah. Yeah.
network server communication, right? So I
We're
don't know.
also
I don't know what
still
the solution would
back
be.
i- at the very beginning when the game first launched and everyone had the nostalgia trip for a few weeks.
Hmm.
Then everything was crazy because literally everyone was trying to connect, like millions of people all at the same
Right.
time. It's died down now, but it pumps back every time there's a new update or an event or something. It jumps back up,
Yeah.
and that load is not. It's not something you can really plan for. You can react to it, but there's no reason to suddenly double or triple or 10 times your server load requirements unless that's happening. Like you can't plan for
Right.
that, and you shouldn't
And
have to.
that's an excuse for the initial release, but for
Yeah.
this new one, there I don't think there's an excuse for not having appropriate server
No,
setup.
there's not an excuse, and I think they did have more bandwidth, but I think it's hard to it's hard to turn on say you have 1x server amount. It's hard to say, okay, let's turn on 10x of our normal amount for this update. And then what if that gets expanded to the next event? Do you do 100 times? Like you can't, it's hard to scale that way really quickly. And so the best they can do is kind of react to it and then scale and then slowly scale it back down as people drop off again.
But when you're
It's really
making
hard.
like millions of dollars,
Oh
you
yeah,
should be able to invest that back into server, like,
right. But
right?
I'm sure you've heard on like the Silk Road, I think is where I've mostly seen it. You can't pay for more engineers. You just can't. Not on a quick enough time scale to actually make the game better fast. You have to give it time. Like you can't, the unlimited resources doesn't mean you have unlimited engineering time or engineering ability. You have to prioritize and you have to pick, like there are certain things that will scale linearly with the amount of money invested in them. But engineering is not one of those things.
But you don't need engineering. You just contract out people to set up your servers.
Well, that's what I
Like,
mean. Contract out people is contracting out engineers.
no, but you just go to ABC networking and say, hey, we need like 100 servers
Well,
or
yeah, and that's
100 times our server capacity, right?
yeah. That's I'm assuming they're still on Google Cloud. They might be on Amazon now. But to a certain extent that works, but you already have to have your game and the network engineered to work that way, and that's the hard part. So it seems like to me that they are going that route, but maybe not everything is dependent on that because now there are every new feature they add, there's more and more server calls that need to be made by the game and from the game. So it's a complicated problem because they're trying to make the game more complex and more full and more enjoyable. But they also, those same people aren't necessarily considering the network load as they're doing it.
When with these like new gyms now, it seems like there's a lot more that the game has to like display and ping the server for.
Yep.
Like, have you noticed like these gyms now they'll have like the timers above each one.
Yeah.
Showing the raids. It's like that's not necessary.
Yeah.
Like show that in the nearby. That doesn't need to be on screen. Same with like the defenders on top of the gyms. Like I think for a while they stopped showing them in the old system until you clicked on it, and I think then it loaded the sprites. But now I noticed that they'll still show what's on top even if you haven't clicked into it. It's like that's not necessary. Like I don't need to know what's there. It's like I'll click on it if I want to see what's inside the gym. And I'm sure that would reduce the required network communication and just general CPU performance of the game, right? So I think it's little things like that it's like optimize for the performance and don't sacrifice performance for just stuff that's not necessary.
Yeah. But I think if I can say anything, overall, I think they've done very well so far. There are certain very obvious issues aside that probably went unfixed for far too long. But overall, I think they've done really well. And I think this new update is like an even further step of doing better. They addressed complaints and had a lot of stuff. And I'm happy with the progress that has been made in the game.
Yeah, like I think with this update, they've added a lot of stuff that the community was asking for.
Yeah.
It like with the TMs and the even the new gym system with the way they set it up with like, okay, so they got rid of like the prestiging, bubble stratting, gym shaving thing. They gave us the TMs. The rare candies are nice because then more abilities to power up things that you might not be able to catch. And then like the NPC type element, non-player characters of raids, right? Yeah. And I can honestly see, like we were talking about this in the Slack channel, that I can see them expanding that concept to further NPC elements, like setting up more permanent like gyms where you'll have like 6 NPCs, possibly themed, and you can, and I thought it was interesting, this like overpowered defenders. Like I didn't see that coming. That was an interesting implementation, and I can see that adding like an added level of difficulty. Like you go into like a water gym and you have like a 13,000 CP Kingler. Like that'd be cool. Like right. So that kind of thing, and you get special gym badges from those types of things. Like I think there's a lot of promise for that element, And yeah, so this, and that's why I keep saying like the concepts introduced in this new update are like awesome.
Mm.
It's just they have to nail down the actual execution of them.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we covered the stuff around the game very well in this episode, and now we can really buckle down and talk about specifics in next week's future chat.
I think so.
All right. Any last words before we go?
No, we'll I don't know. I guess we'll put some stuff in the show notes in case people have never even heard of Pokemon Go before. So, but yeah, no, definitely recommend checking it out, especially if you're a Gen Xer / pre-millennial that might have grown up around Pokemon and might want to get involved in a fun little kind of social game. And like coming back to like, it's all about the fun of it and just engaging with the community about it. And I think that's done a lot for me personally. And I think a lot of other people benefit from it too. We'll put links to the Sylph Road subreddit too, because if you want to learn about it and get involved and kind of catch up on everything you might have missed up to this point, that's a good place to start too.
Mm-hmm. If you are the spouse of someone who plays and have ridiculed it, consider playing again. Just throwing that out there. All right. Well, then that's it for this week. You can head to unwindmedia.com/desktop for past episodes of this show and more. And you can head to, we talk about Pokemon Go in future chat pretty much every week. So if you enjoy this show, we also do another show on a more regular basis with our friend Nick Maddox. And you can find that at unwindmedia.com/future chat. And we'll see you next time.
Oh.